When something goes wrong, and I mean really wrong, involving, say, a child or a young adult, the first question people tend to ask is,
Oh, won't somebody please think of the children?
alright, maybe not so hysterically, but behind that question is a deeper one.
What is the responsibility of a parent to a child?
Is it to make sure they attend school, or is it to make sure that they have food in their belly and clothes on their back, or is it more than just all of the above? Now, I've seen this question about multiple times and in multiple different places, and I've got a take on it and I'm interested in yours, but I also think that maybe, just maybe, it could be the wrong question entirely. So, with that, let's look into the question of what is the responsibility of a parent to a child, and to do that, we need to go to Werribee, Australia and meet some kids you may already have heard about. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to introduce you to the Teenage Kings of Werribee.
Teenagers in the video have been terrorising their community.
By the very youths you're seeing on the screen. This footage is from a home movie currently being sold on DVD. The youth gang then turns on the homeless. And no sense of right or wrong.
Got no conscience. They don't realise that this stuff is just horrific.
So let me paint a picture. The Teenage Kings of Werribee were a group of boys, all under the age of 18, who filmed themselves committing various acts, some of them criminal, to put onto a DVD so they could sell them at their high school for $5 a pop. They even posted clips on YouTube because, of course, you're not quite a criminal mastermind unless you put the evidence online for everyone to see. They named their masterpiece the movie, and I'll bleep that out for the sake of YouTube, even though they let it get posted up back then. Yeah, YouTube. But in this movie, believed to be shot in June 2006, the 12 teens filmed themselves harassing a homeless man, egging a taxi driver, throwing hands at school, a little bit of criminal damage, and somehow making chlorine bombs. Yeah, you heard me. Chlorine bombs. Apparently it's easier than making mustard gas or enriching uranium. Let's just thank God they weren't North Korean kids. I just think it's strange that they were smart enough to make bombs, but not smart enough not to film themselves engaging in criminality. But I digress because it gets darker than that, much darker. Because two of the boys lured a teenage girl with learning difficulties to the Werribee shopping centre. They intercepted her at the Werribee train station where they met the rest of the group. They then took her to the Werribee River where they assaulted her, physically, sexually and psychologically. The video itself caused widespread controversy, as you would probably suspect, when it was aired on a current affairs show called Today Tonight a few months later. Police got involved and by November 2007 the boys were sentenced to not jail, but to a rehab program on positive sexuality. I'm not even going to weigh in on that one, but you can find out more about the Werribee DVD incident and in greater detail if you want to, although it's actually quite disturbing. I'll leave the link of 2 YouTube videos in the description below. They're actually quite good. But I wanted to use the Werribee incident for one reason in particular, and I'm going to bring that up a bit later. But for now, I want to look at what I think is a problem with parental responsibility that I think is actually relevant. Let's start by looking at what a contradiction is. In the Oxford Dictionary definition, a combination of statements, ideas or features which are opposed to one another. A situation in which inconsistent elements are present. The statement of a position opposite to one already made. Now keep that in mind. So take me as an example. If I decide that I'm not going to work, ever, I won't have any income to live the lavish lifestyles that I see on these Insta reels. Or worse still, if I decide to go and, I don't know, delete one of these fake people on Insta with their fake show reels, I'll be held accountable by the law. I'll actually be accountable in both situations as it's me that bears the consequences. But flip that to the Teenage Kings of Werribee. Now, if one of those so-called kings decide that they don't want to attend school anymore because they're going to be an independent filmmaker specialising in disturbing content for YouTube, it will be their parents that will be chased and harassed and made to pay a fine by the state, not the kid. The parents are accountable, it's part of their parental responsibility. But when they committed the heinous act seen on the video, it was the kids who were held accountable by the state, not the parents. This to me is a contradiction. Accountability changes depending on the context. In one instance, The state says that the parents should be accountable for getting their kids to school, but not be accountable for making sure that their kids don't go and molest a teenage girl. The parents bore no accountability for the actions of the Teenage Kings of Werribee or for what happened on June 2006. So, if you ask the parents of the Teenage Kings of Werribee the question, what is the responsibility of a parent to a child, they will probably answer, well, to teach their kids to not be accountable for the things they do or for their fucked up attitude towards teenage girls. I came to this question because I saw something similar on Quora and I read down some of the answers until I came to this response. And the last part made me think, is the question being framed wrong? Maybe a better question would be, should you be accountable for your kids' actions? And the reason I think that should be the question is because, well, remember I said I wanted to refer back to Werribee for one particular reason? Well, that reason is how the parents of the Teenage Kings of Werribee reacted. So, it's October 2006 in Melbourne, Australia, and families up and down the state are sitting down and tuning in to watch Today Tonight, their current affairs show of choice. But on a couple of evenings, some of those families will get a first-hand experience of what it's like to not just watch the news, but to actually be the news. The show aired in 2 parts. On the first night, the show only broke the first part of the DVD, so it only showed the kids doing all that dumb shit they did before they got all molesty. Now, at this point, I'm going to give some of the parents the benefit of the doubt because some of the parents were quoted as saying, it's just a bit of fun. Now, although that response is problematic in and of itself, especially after watching your son and his mates act the way that they did, I'm not sure they meant that in response to what they did to the girl. I could be wrong on that, let me know if I am. But on the next day, with the permission of the father of the girl, the show aired a second part where they showed bits that were okay for telly of the assault on the girl. As a side note, can you imagine being the father of the girl and having to see that? But anyway, at this point, 3 of the parents took their kids down to the police station to have their kids formally questioned. Either they were mortified at what their kids had done, or they were just trying to preempt the inevitable visit from the local constabulary. But I think that at this point, this would be what most of us would do in that situation, except, and I can't believe I read this, the Herald Sun newspaper ran an article where parents of one of the youths involved said that the girl was, and I quote, partly to blame for what happened, and then tried to excuse the behaviour as just filming friends. I'll leave the link to the article in the description so you can read it as well if you want to. And so here seems to be a good place to reverse back to the initial question. Should you be accountable for your kids' actions? And even with kids having their own mind and having free will, I think, yeah, you should be. And there are a few reasons why. Firstly, and probably the most important reason, is that in most cases, the parents choose to have kids. As a parent, it's your choice, your responsibility. You're the one that should be accountable. Secondly, the whole flipping from parent to child, to parent, to dirt, doesn't put the onus of accountability in the right place. We accept that children are not fully developed and that might affect their decision making, but you haven't got that argument for an adult, so surely it makes sense to put that responsibility on the adult, not the kid. And lastly, I think parental responsibility should come with that accountability for your children, because it should be that one thing that makes you invested in how your child develops. It's your skin in the game. You want to fuck around and teach your kids the wrong thing or nothing at all, then you should be the one to find out. And this isn't an outlying view, because there was this case in the US of James and Jennifer Crumbly, who were sentenced to 10 to 15 years each over a gun attack by their son in a Michigan school in 2021. So if you as a parent are going to drop the ball with your kids, you should be the one that has to pick it up. And remember, 99% of kids across the entire world don't go out and murder or molest people. And yes, there are times that, despite your best, shit happens. Unfortunately, you got the short straw and your kid's a complete bastard. You tried everything and nothing's worked. Fine. No one's trying to vilify you. Mitigation is the fact that we accept that this can be the case. Sometimes things happen despite your best attempts, but if you're going to refer to what happened to that girl as just filming friends and say that she was partly responsible for what happened, then maybe you should have to prove that's not an outlook that you've taught your kids, because the accountability for what happened doesn't just lay with the kids, but with you as a fantastically shitty parent. So that's the end of the video, and those are my thoughts. Let me know what yours are in the comments, and I will see you there.